Hey everyone, so it's officially the day after Christmas and I've been working on a few car projects here and there. Lately, I've been trying to do a little bit of maintenance on my Tacoma. So I hit it with seafoam, I changed the O-ring on the distributor, changed the valve cover gasket. I actually swapped the valve cover to one that I had painted lying around many years ago in another video where I kind of failed at wrinkle finishing it, but looks good enough to do the job for now until I paint my other valve cover the way that I want to finish that one. So in the interim, I put that in, went ahead and did an oil change, and then now it's time to change out my belts. Because I made the vent in the hood, water gets in there, and because it rains nonstop in Florida, over the course of a few years of rain pouring down into that, I did develop a bit of a squeak when I would first turn the truck on. You'd hear some pulley squeal. So I've got some brand new belts and I've got a new pulley that's going to go in there for one of the idler pulleys, and that's going to help to alleviate that issue. So follow along and I'll show you guys exactly how I do that. So here are the three belts that you're going to need in order to do this job. You're going to need one for your AC, one for your power steering, and one for your alternator. Now, this is kind of an older style. Some motors have just one long serpentine or two belts. It varies depending on your car. In the case of the Tacoma, that's the three that you have, and there is an older tensioner system that's different from a lot of modern cars where you just have a spring-loaded swing arm with a pulley that you just put a wrench and turn, and kind of comes away and you can take the belt off easily. This requires you to loosen the individual tensioners. Now, I've gone ahead and also got a new pulley here. This is not necessary, but it is a nice to have. Now, in order to put in the new belts, you obviously have to remove the old ones. This tensioning system that this uses is a little different from a lot of modern cars. So basically, the logic is that you have one bolt, in this case this one, which regulates the belt tension by moving this pulley, and this bolt position is fixed by a bolt that comes across this way. So I have to loosen this 14mm bolt here so that then I can loosen the 14mm bolt that does the tensioning. The same thing applies, right? This is the power steering belt. The same thing applies to the alternator belt. So looking down at the alternator, you have a similar setup. You have to unlock this bolt here so that then you can hit the tensioner bolt on the opposite side and loosen the tension at the alternator. Now, Toyota in all their wisdom decided to use a 12mm here instead of a 14 as they did on the front. So you'll have to do that. But first, we've got to get this power steering one out, so let's do that. So this last pulley uses the same exact system. You're going to have to take off this bolt here and then use this one here for the tensioning. This uses size 14mm. As you can see, I have quite a bit of oil going on down here. I did have a leaky valve cover gasket which I replaced. However, the amount of oil here leads me to suspect that something else is leaking. So I will be investigating that. I'm going to clean all this oil off and then drive it around and see if I still see leaks. If I don't, it's possible that it was just driving around for way too long with bad valve cover gasket. If I do, it's possible I have a front main seal failure. One way or another, we'll get to the bottom of that and solve it. But for now, let's undo this and undo that. So I went ahead and removed that lower pulley just by completely undoing the nut that holds it on, and I'm going to be replacing it. I don't think the old one's really in bad shape, but I already went and bought a new one. It's the same exact unit. I had replaced this one in the past because it had actually seized. The OEM one had many years ago. So I replaced it at that time. I'm gonna replace it now for a brand new one. And I'll probably do the upper pulley at a later time as well. The upper tensioner pulley. So these are the 3 belts that I'm going to be using in detail. Looking right here from the upper left corner, you're going to see that I have the part number which corresponds to air conditioning. Then I have power steering, and then I have the alternator / fan belt. Now, I no longer have a clutch fan. I did switch to an electric. However, I do still have the pulley in place. That has to remain in place, so that remains the same as it was before. Nothing has really changed as far as that goes. And I've made sure to show you guys these numbers in case you lost them, you don't mix them up. So the first belt that you have to put back on is the one for the alternator. So here you're going to see where basically I'm just going to reach down in there. I'm going to slip my brand new belt over the crank pulley all the way towards the back and over the alternator. That way it's aligned where it needs to be. And once I do that, then I'm going to go ahead and shift the alternator over by hand and start tightening the bolt down. And as I tighten the tension bolt down, that's going to tension the belt correctly. Once the belt is tense enough, then I'm going to tighten the bolt that goes through, and that bolt locks the tension bolt in place. That means that my tension will be held and vibrations will not cause that to loosen over time. So basically here you can see that I've already got the belt on, and from there I just move on to the tightening sequence. So that long bolt you see coming across, that is the alternator's tensioner bolt, and then the one that is perpendicular to that, you see that little sort of square block on the end of it. There's a bolt that goes through there, and that's the one that locks the tensioner in place. So here I am just performing the tension part. It's going to take me a while and a few cranks to do that, and then I'll go ahead and I'll tighten the one in the front, and this job will be done. Obviously it pays here because you can kind of tilt the alternator back and forth. You want to make sure you tilt it all the way out so you're not like having resistance as you're tightening that all the way. So basically pull the alternator so it's keeping the belt in tension or as close to tension as it's going to be anyway without you using the bolt. Then start really cranking that bolt down. And as you do that, you're going to feel the belt get tighter and tighter. You want to have like a slight amount of give left in the belt. If I remember correctly, the Haynes manual said you want to have like a 1/4 inch of give, if you will. You can measure that. There are tools also for checking the tension. I've always done this by feel personally. I just tension them until they're nice and tight, and there's a small amount of give, and I've never really had problems. I have belts that last for years, but again, your mileage may vary, and the proper way is using a tensioning tool. So the next belt that you're going to add on is the one for the AC. That's the next in the sequence on the crank pulley. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. And last, I'll do the power steering. My air con. So I ended up finding the solution, and that was to just once again put it on the crank pulley, put it on the alternator, and then pull up that tensioner pulley from up here and pop it in through the belt, and that worked pretty well. So now I'm just going to tension it and then lock it in place, and we'll do the last belt for the power steering. So that just leaves the power steering belt, which is the final belt. As usual, I'm going to go to the bottom, grab the crank pulley, and go to the top and grab the pulley on the power steering. pulley in. So now tension, and then we lock into this. And in this case, I can probably get away with using drill. Didn't want to have to do all that by hand, so put my impact on there. And then we'll finish tensioning it by hand. So I loosened this pulley slightly, and the same for the other lower, and that quieted down the noise that you guys were hearing. And with that, the belt swap is done. So right here we have the old belts. They weren't in the worst possible condition, but they were certainly getting there, right? Like you can see a little bit of strings sticking out the edges, and they're a little crusty, but they're not really bad. They hadn't like cracked inside or out, so they certainly weren't the worst condition belts. I could have probably run them for a while longer, but I'm happy to take them off, and the new belts and pulley are so much quieter. Like I no longer have the squeal that I was hearing, so definitely it made a difference, and I'm really happy that I got this done. Alright, so there you have it. It's actually a pretty straightforward job to change the belts on the Tacoma. It's just 3 of them. There's basically a tensioner pulley that has a bolt through it that locks the tension bolt in place. Undo that, move the tension bolt, remove the belt, put on the belt, and then do the opposite of what you just did, and you should be just fine. Obviously, you want to tweak how tight you tighten the bolts for the pulleys, because that can cause a certain amount of noise. Obviously, if you know the accurate torque to which you need to torque them to, that is a great solution there. Unfortunately, I didn't have that information available to me, so I just went by feel. It's what you often do with mechanics. I do own a torque wrench, a couple of them, so whenever I do know the torques and stuff, I always try to show you guys those torques and always torque to those specific values. That is possibly the best approach. It's what I recommend. Just because I do something a certain way doesn't mean you should. The correct way is always to torque to spec. Anywho, that being said, if you guys like this content, feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you're notified when I post up another one. That way you can remain engaged. I'm definitely going to be doing a bunch more Tacoma things. I've got an update on my Speeduino and how that went, because I finally did put it inside the truck and test it. So stay tuned, and if you have any comments, questions, etc., feel free to leave that in the comments section. As always, thank you guys for watching.